Hi guys, and welcome back for the latest video. Today we are covering the chapter 345 leaks of My Hero Academia, and as you know, there's an all-out war going on within My Hero Academia, and I'm so excited to talk about it. Last chapter was a little bit of a kind of catch-up as to how the heroes formulated their plan, but it seems this chapter is all about the action. But without further ado, let's hop right into chapter 345 of My Hero Academia. So the chapter begins inside one of the iron cages, showing the villains confused by the fact that they are moving. Toga is desperate and asks them to break this thing as quick as possible while she thinks of Deku, and some of them actually manage to destroy these prisons, including Dabi, who mocks them by saying that they can only hold him for 3 seconds. I think that's kind of expected. Dabi, as we know, might be the second or third strongest villain within the villain organization, so obviously these barriers wouldn't likely hold him. Shoto appears in front of Dabi, saying that those 3 seconds are more than enough and attacks him with his fire. The heroes are confronting the villains that got loose and pushing them towards the portals. So this Dabi vs Shoto matchup is already here, and I'm really not sure who's going to be the victor of this fight, but it was mentioned in chapter, I believe, 343, that eventually Shoto wants to sit down with Dabi and have some food with him. But I don't think that's that realistic. I don't think that Dabi is that redeemable of a character, but I guess we'll be finding out. The chapter then says the plan to simultaneously push them towards the portals is successful, and we see Monoma laughing once again, saying that he is the one pulling the strings. We also see a hero very similar to Crust, both in look and in quirk, dealing with one of the generals of the Liberation Front and saying that they also have a plan to deal with Shigaraki's decay. The heroes then rush towards the portals that have been assigned to each of them, and Bakugo calls Deku, but before they can enter it together, Midoriya is pulled in by something that came from another portal. So it's interesting that the heroes clearly have a portal assigned to them, so they already formulated what matchups they plan to have and what heroes will face off versus which villains, which is pretty interesting, but clearly Bakugo and Deku were assigned to the same portal together, and they were going to enter it together, but now Deku was pulled out, and I think it's pretty obvious that the portal that they would go to would be Bakugo and Deku going to face Shigaraki. The spoilers then say that Fat stayed behind and is tasked by All Might to arrest any villains left with his Fat and to protect Ioma. He also instructs Monoma to return to where Aizawa is. The operation enters phase 2, and we see a double page showing the heroes charged with taking care of All for One, Endeavor, Hawks, Tokoyami, Kamui, Pixie Bob, Tiger, Shishido, and many more. They are in Gunja Mountain. Endeavor says that the goo quirk used by All for One is a worse version of Kurogiri's Warp Gate and was used in Kamino. It can only cover a short distance and cannot transport the user, so the UA barrier improvements were also made with this in mind, and now All for One is getting what he deserves. This is actually a matchup I really kind of didn't expect for All for One facing off. I thought Endeavor was 100% going to be matched up with Dabi immediately in the fight, but clearly we see that the heroes, at least the professional ones, excluding Tokoyami, they're all facing off versus All for One. And this matchup is kind of actually really surprising in a good way. I didn't know who Hawks would be truly facing off against within this final war, and Hawks is one of my favorite characters, and so him facing off versus All for One is quite fitting. I'm not sure if these heroes can pull it off, but Endeavor being in this fight versus All for One kind of does push the narrative that Shoto is going to be facing off versus Dabi by himself, at least for the time being. Obviously, I think Endeavor will get involved eventually, but right now that doesn't seem to be the case. All for One then admits that their plan is great, but he says that splitting the heroes at a time like this is a bit risky. He wonders if bringing One for All face to face with Tomura is really a good idea. Also, he comments that Endeavor has left his youngest son in a very complicated situation, and on the next page, we see Shoto facing Dabi in Kamino. Ida is also with them. The scene then cuts away and we see an impressive double spread of UA, which is floating on a huge piece of land and protected by a force field. I'm not sure how they have UA floating and what force field is protecting them, but that seems pretty cool. A portal then opens and Shigaraki is transported there, where Best Jeanist was waiting for him. Bakugo then appears and says that there is a problem. Deku has been taken away. The last page shows that he has been pulled by Toga and is standing next to Uaraka, Sue, and Gang Orca in a place that looks like a water stadium. Deku doesn't understand why Danger Sense hasn't activated, and Toga has a serene expression. And the chapter ends here. So as expected, the matchup that was supposed to happen clearly seems to be Best Jeanist, Deku, and Bakugo facing off versus Shigaraki. This trio I think actually would be a pretty effective matchup against Shigaraki, but I doubt that that's the only people within UA that's going to be able to fight Shigaraki. Within the portal, we didn't see Mirio at all, and I'm sure Mirio's also lurking there. We haven't seen Eri either. It's not likely they would use Eri, I guess, in battle, but I guess if things came worst to worst, Perhaps Eri could hop on Deku's back again. What's really notable too is that the one that pulled Deku away was Toga. And Toga earlier in this chapter was said to be thinking of Deku, so it makes sense that she grabbed him, but I kind of question how she would be able to physically grab Deku given how strong Deku has become. He's top 3 in the series so far, so her grabbing him is a little bit, I guess questionable, but his danger sense did not activate. But as we know, danger sense not activating doesn't indicate that Deku isn't in danger. It just means for the time being, she has no malicious intent and no intent to kill him. Rather, I think she has a lot of questions. Because the last we saw with Toga and her relationship with Deku and Uraraka, she asked if they see her as human, but through her fight with Uraraka, it seemed to prove that Uraraka's answer was kind of no. And so I'm curious what her motivations are throughout this encounter with Deku. I feel like she has a lot of questions she wants answered, and she seems on the fence of being a villain or perhaps being an ally to the heroes. The questions she has for Deku, it could be similar to the questions she had for Uraraka, and to see if Deku also sees her as a villain. But Toga has a serene expression on her face, and she's also surrounded with Gang Orca and Uraraka, so I don't think Deku's in any immediate danger. But rather this is kind of a touchback to what happened a few chapters ago with Uraraka saying that she still thought of Toga, that at the end of the day she's human, and we know that Uraraka has a narrative that she perhaps wants to save Toga, similarly to how Deku wants to save Shigaraki. They parallel each other in these ways. In the meantime, with Toga asking these questions to Deku, it does kind of pose an issue for Bakugo and Best Jeanist, because now those two are face to face with Shigaraki. And it is cool that Bakugo is now with his mentor to face off for Shigaraki, and we can see some duo action. But Shigaraki isn't going to be defeated without Deku there. So hopefully these questions from Toga get answered pretty fast, and we can get Deku side by side with Bakugo in an amazing matchup. In the second My Hero Academia movie, watching Bakugo and Deku fight side by side was one of the highlights of any cinematic anime experience I've ever seen, and I've been itching since I saw that movie almost 2 full years ago to see them fighting side by side once again. Since the fight with Star and Stripes, Shigaraki obviously did lose a little bit of quirks, but he's confirmed to still have decay, search, and hyper-regeneration, so he's still a major threat. And the hero who looks very similar to Crust, he says that they have a plan to deal with this decay, but given the nature of decay and that being the staple of Shigaraki's entire power system, I'm not sure how they could possibly deal with it. His decay is actually one of my favorite quirks within the series. So through this chapter, it seems Deku was slightly kidnapped, which is, again, surprising. But it adds more to the story, and we needed this plot point to kind of come to conclusion regarding Uraraka and Deku and Toga. I absolutely can't wait for each of these chapters coming out week to week. My god, imagine if Horikoshi was a monthly writer, how amazing these chapters would be, even more so than they are now. And there's been a lot of speculation for all this time regarding the final fights of My Hero Academia. In fact, I made a video on it about a month or 2 ago. But we finally have these answers to some of these final matchups. This chapter was great, and I can't wait to see the official release of this chapter. And in case you guys forgot, the My Hero Academia manga is planning to end this year, so we really are within the final arc. So you can be expecting bangers each chapter that comes out, because there is so many things to touch on before Horikoshi closes out this masterpiece of a story that we've been following for so many years. So guys, if you enjoyed this video and you're new to the channel, I cover My Hero Academia every Thursday. So if you want to be a part of this community and support me, please do drop a subscription, as it really helps out my channel. And we've had a ton of growth lately, and I really appreciate each and every single one of you. As always, I hope you are all having a beautiful day, and remember, be greedier.